Now we will add a household for John Mike Doe. Underneath his profile information, we see the link for household information. It says 0 household. We click on it to expand to get the detail, and the detail says the same thing. There are no households for this client. So we'll start a new household. We'll click on the Start New Household button. A household, or the client that we're creating the household for, is John Mike Doe, same as what we see in the profile here. And so everything is in relation to him. Household type, what's John's household type? Let's say he's married with children. So his household type is couple with children. Head of household, is he the head of household? Only one person per household is designated as the head of household. Typically it's the husband or the adult male caretaker. We specify he is head of household. What's his relationship to the head of household? Himself or self. Date entered defaults to the current date. We can leave it at that. This is the date that we're adding him to his household. Click on Start New Household. The screen will change. The information that we added so far appears up at the top. Here's the type of household, couple with children. It currently has one member. That member is John Mike Doe. Head of household, yes. Relationship, self. Date he was entered. The information underneath this has to do with additional clients that we're adding to the household. So when we see this section here, household member information, we're starting on the next member that we want to add into the household. Let's start with his wife, Jane. Is she the head of household? No, she's not. What's her relationship to the head of household? It's wife. You leave the default date entered. Before we add Jane to the household, we need to see if she doesn't already exist in Service Point, and it works the same way as in the previous video. We need to search Service Point to see if she exists. There's one or two ways of doing that. We can look for her by her client ID, so if you know her client ID, you would specify it here. Let's say we don't know what it is. So the other way that we search is by name. Here's her first name, Jane. The last name defaults to whatever the last name of the head of household is, but that can be changed if needed. We will now search for the client. And now we see a list of names that sound like Jane Doe. This is only one page. Again, at the bottom here, we're showing 1 of 10 of 15. So there's only 10 people per page. There's another page here. We'll make this quick and we'll say this is the Jane Doe that I'm looking for. And so I'll click on her name and she will be added to the household. So now I have 2 people in the household. Let's pretend, and I'll explain this in a later video, that I made a mistake, and so I'm going to remove her. So now I just showed you how to add an existing Service Point client into a household. Let's say Jane has never been entered into Service Point before. And so we're going to do 2 things at once now. We're going to first and foremost create her as a Service Point client, and then secondly add her as a member into John Mike Doe's household. So to begin that, I'll delete her from this household. I'm not deleting her from the system. I'm not deleting her client ID in Service Point. I'm just removing her from the household. And this message says as much. Are you sure you want to remove this household member? Just removing her from the household. I click OK. The detail area refreshes, and I see now that I just have John Mike Doe in the household. To get right back to where I started, next to the household type, don't click on this add client to existing household. It doesn't work very well. To get right back to where I was, next to the household type is the pencil for the household type. Click on the pencil and you're brought right back to where you started. So So let's go right back to Jane Doe. We're going to add her. She the head of household? No, she's the wife. We search for Jane Doe. I know this is not the Jane Doe that I want because her birth date is in 1961. The Jane Doe I have in front of me, her birth date is in 1972. And as well, I clicked on the next page here and I looked at the other clients and they don't match either. So I know I have a brand new person. So again, I'm going to be doing two things at once here. Adding her to the household and adding her to Service Point. Because right now she does not have a Service Point client ID. This information stayed. We still know that she's the wife. And here's her name, Jane Doe, and I'll specify now her last 4 digits of the Social Security number. And this client demographic screen looks exactly as what you saw in the previous video when you were entering a brand new client in the Service Point, because that's exactly what we're doing here. So specify the rest of the information. The race and the ethnicity default to that of the head of household, but of course that can be changed if needed. Now when I click on this button, Add Client with this information, again, I'm doing two things at once. Adding this person into Service Point, which gives them a client ID, and then the second thing is adding them into John Doe's household. So we click on this button, the screen refreshes, we're up at the top looking at the current members, which are now 2. Here's Jane Doe. She has a client ID and she's been entered into this household of couple with children where John Mike Doe is the head of household. Let's add one more person, their daughter Janie. So same way, is Janie the head of household? No, she's not. What's her relationship to the head of household? She's the daughter. Still, even if we're absolutely certain that she doesn't exist, we always want to search for her first because we may be incorrect. Search for her. There is a Janie Doe, but again, the birth date is different. This Janie Doe was born in 2007, and so the information remains here. It remains here. We specify her last 4 digits of her Social Security number, fill out the rest of the information. Again, two things at once. We've added her into Service Point, given her an ID 17965, and we've added her as daughter into the household. Click on Exit and refresh. This detailed information back on John Mike Doe's profile refreshes, and now we see all the members in the household. I can navigate to the profiles and the assessments for each of these newly added members simply by clicking on the link. So right now we're in John Mike Doe. If I want to go to Jane Doe's profile, click on her link and the screen changes and now we're in Jane Doe. Likewise, Janie Doe, I click on her link. Now I'm in Janie Doe, and all the information that we specified when we added her remains in her assessment. And that concludes adding a household.